we really do appreciate all of the support that we get from the community. Really does. At least, it means the world to us. So we are happy to bring you what we hope is entertaining content, regarding the real estate world, and especially in our little corner of Prescott, Arizona.
Yeah, I'm really excited. We've got some awesome guests coming up this month. Judd Simmons is coming on to talk about what he does here for the county. And we're also getting a local accountant to talk about tax issues that we should be looking forward to in 2019. And yeah, we've got a really good lineup for this year too. So it's pretty awesome. But today we're going to talk about, but today we're going to talk about HOAs.
Everyone's favorite villain. You either love them or you hate them, or you love to hate them, it seems like. I know that it's a common request, the first time we meet with a buyer, the first words out of their mouth, no HOA.
Why do you think that is, Kellen?
Well, I think that, and sometimes rightly so, they have, Arizona is still kind of the wild, wild west a little bit. And so, people really do take issue with anybody telling them what they can do on property that they own. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a big reason why, the stigma is, well, trash collection is at 8 a.m. on Monday. And if you don't have your trash cans back behind your gate by 8:17, it's a $20 per hour fine, and they're just kind of micromanaging people's property rights. Mm-hmm. And there's also some negative connotation from history. Some of the first HOAs were not exactly developed under what you might call the most wholesome of circumstances, or for the most wholesome of reasons. And that's unfortunate. But it's evolved so much past that now. But I think that there's still a little bit of that stigma surrounding those organizations. So what is an HOA, really?
An HOA is short for Homeowners Association. And usually the way that it works is a property developer decides they want to subdivide and, create a community, planned community, master plan community. And a part of the process of doing that is to create a public report. And in that public report, for some cities, they require an HOA to be established. And that HOA consists of developer appointed board members at first. And they include the CC&Rs. What are CC&Rs? What does that stand for, Kellen?
Contracts, covenants, and restrictions.
Conditions,
excuse me.
Yes, conditions, covenants, and restrictions. And then, of course, the articles of incorporation and bylaws. And, there's a lot of public reports out there that they copy paste, a kind of a specific list of those things. But it's pretty standard. A lot of these are pretty standard for a master community.
Yeah.
And it's appointed by the developer at first because they have to sell some of the lots before they can get homeowners to take over. Usually it takes about a year for it to be handed over to the homeowners, and then it's more homeowners directed with a board. But most of the time, the board is a voluntary board, and they're there just to put in their 2 cents about how their assets are going to be protected and what's going to happen with the money and all of that. But they usually hire a separate entity.
A management company.
A management company like HomeCo is a really big one.
Yeah, they're certainly the most prevalent in our area.
Yeah, Kinney Management, there's
Man,
some...
wouldn't it have been nice to have somebody from one of those boards on today?
I know, right? I know. It's too bad.
It's a shame.
It's a shame. Yeah, we were hoping to get somebody, but they were actually very excited about coming on, but they were told they couldn't because...
Yeah, we got the kibosh at the last minute.
Yeah, because
they were
upper
afraid
management... Yeah.
that people weren't going to be nice to them on the internet.
Yeah. Which I mean, I don't know
Which
how
I get
they-
it. I do
Yeah.
understand, but I think it would have been a really good opportunity for someone who represents those organizations to come on and really explain what they do for, the citizens who own homes in associations that they manage. Because there's certainly some good reasons for HOAs.
Oh, absolutely.
Listen, nobody wants to live next to a purple and yellow house. I know one of my clients bought a house here in the area, and next to it was a purple and yellow house. And during the course of inspections and everything that went along with it, we had a conversation with the homeowner. He was out walking his dog, and he like, oh, new neighbors. And I was talking to him, and he was talking about how he painted his house that color because the previous owner of the home that my clients were buying, they had some nasty feud. And he painted the house purple just to spite the homeowner. And assured us, I haven't verified this, but he said he's a part-time resident of the area. He assured my clients that now that he knew as soon as he knew he had nice new neighbors, he'd change the color back to something more reasonable.
Wow.
So HOAs definitely help that. And Jody's chiming in. Thanks for watching with us, Jody. A lot of people fear what they don't understand, and I 100% agree with that. That's, I think, the biggest reason for fear is a lack of understanding.
Yeah, I would say that when we get a phone call from somebody who's interested in buying a house and they tell us that they are not interested in looking at houses that are in an HOA, by the end of the conversation, I usually convince them to consider at least looking. And as long as they understand how the HOA works in that community.
And how it's protecting them.
Yes.
And what it's providing them, then a lot of times it can change people's mind.
Yeah, I think, again, there's a stigma with HOAs and that they won't be able to do what they want with their property. But I think in general, some of these HOAs are pretty reasonable. Not to say all are, but they are pretty reasonable. And, sometimes you see astronomical HOA fees and there's really no justification for it. And then sometimes you get a lot of value with your HOA. So the questions that usually we need to ask when we're looking at HOA value, like what the value of the HOA is what does it include? What does your payment to the HOA include? Minimally, what I've seen is that it covers a liability policy for the neighborhood and road maintenance, inside of the community.
That's really common.
Common space. So, if there's a fence around the community, fence maintenance, if there's landscaping, the irrigation for that landscaping, and for somebody to come in and blow the leaves. I mean, you always see those people out there, blowing leaves and, making sure that the trees aren't dying and just making it look nice. And then, of course, sidewalk maintenance, if there's an issue with the sidewalk or
perimeter walls
right.
are a big one.
Things like that. So
gate maintenance, if it's in a gated community, you're paying to keep the gate up and make sure that it's functioning properly and letting the people that are supposed to be in there in and keeping the people who are supposed to not be in there out.
Yeah. So I think, something like $75 a month is actually nothing when looking at HOAs because it's usually very minimal what it includes. Whereas you can get up into the 200, plus range for HOA fees, but that includes a lot of things.
Yeah, and your more basic communities around here who don't have a ton of amenities, like pools and sports courts and things of that nature, they're typically pretty low priced. And because they're not providing much. Allow me to play devil's advocate for just a second, though.
Okay.
So, because one of the things that they upkeep is they upkeep private roads. Now, last time I checked, most of these HOAs are in cities already, cities and towns, right, that have roads. Why isn't the city upkeeping those roads?
Oh, because they love HOAs. Double taxation is kind of commonplace today because cities require those public reports, and sometimes a condition of approval for these public reports is that they enact an HOA because they want to be able to get the tax revenue from the homeowners that purchase in these communities, but they also want to push the liability onto the HOA. So it's a win-win for the city because they don't have to worry about that maintenance. The HOA does, but they still get the tax revenue as well. So that's commonplace. That happens everywhere. And
just something I found very interesting as we were researching this topic even deeper. Like I was like, that strike one.
Strike one.
Strike one.
Well, yeah, I think it's pretty smart on the city's part.
Absolutely.
I mean, because they can conditionally approve the planned community as long as
we need to see this.
Yep.
To make sure that we get all. I mean, because not only are they receiving revenue for from the taxes, but they're also receiving revenue. Public utilities are not there by the goodness and kindness of municipalities. They're making money on public utilities, which are used by most members of an HOA. There's some occasions in our area where they're not, especially out in Chino Valley. There's still there's a couple of subdivisions that are in HOAs that are not connected to public utilities. So they're getting they're getting new customers from public utilities. They're getting new roads that they don't have to maintain. And they're getting more property taxes. It's like a triple win for the city.
Yeah. I mean, good for them. I mean, that's sometimes how the world works.
It absolutely is.
It's a fun fact.
Yeah.
Fun fact.
It's one of those things when you start researching, you're like, those guys. Those guys.
Yeah. You gotta play the game that way sometimes.
Yeah. And then there's you always hear about the weird stories, and I found a few articles just thumbing through Reddit and a couple of other places. One that I thought was really funny to me is there was an HOA in Sacramento in California who tried to require all of the homeowners in the community to leave their garage doors open during daylight hours all the time because they were suspecting that people were illegally renting out their garages for people to live in.
Oh, that's so crazy.
So they tried to force all of the homeowners in the community to leave their garage doors open from like 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. They got shut down real quick. But just the fact that they were trying, it just sometimes, these are the people who run the HOAs they're just regular people.
Yes. Who
don't have a whole lot of sometimes experience with matters such as these. They're certainly not lawyers most of the time. And so they don't understand how legalities work. And then there were two there was one in Missouri and one in Georgia where they told the homeowner that they couldn't have a certain color of playset even though it was in the backyard.
Oh, okay.
Just little things, and that's where people have the opinion that, homeowners associations are just petty jerks out there to take every kind of dollar that they can for you. And while that can be the case, because again, you're dealing with human beings who aren't always used to these kind of professional responsibilities, I think a lot of the time they can do a lot of good for protecting homeowners' property values. If you're in a tidier neighborhood, your property values grow better.
They do. And CC&Rs typically run with the land. So even if an HOA board disbands and there is no official active HOA, CC&Rs are still in place and they're enforceable by the community. So unless it's illegal, like if the CC&Rs are now legal, then they're not enforceable. So for instance, way back when, like you were talking about, they had certain CC&Rs that said basically that the developer could change them at any point without anybody else's input. And that's illegal. You have to have a quorum. You have to have, you have to have the opinion of everyone in order to change something in the CC&Rs. So,
and redlining, it used to be it used to be a big issue. And CC&Rs were used to redline communities. Listen, only this kind of people can buy lots in this subdivision.
Right. And
that kind of stuff, which is all illegal now.
Yes. Yeah. And if you pull up, old CC&Rs, some of that stuff comes up, and our buyers sometimes come to us and go, "What is that about?" And we're like, "Oh, it's unenforceable. It's never going to be enforceable." So
the Fair Housing Act came and
kiboshed that.
Yeah.
For sure.
Washed all of that stuff.
Yes. Yeah. So, so HOAs have really developed over the years. HOAs, we were actually going to bring out an example, like here in town, Prescott Lakes is a very good example. That's a big master plan community. And I was actually talking to the association management representative today just to get some good questions answered. And the way they work is they have a master association fee, and then they have a neighborhood fee. So you have your master fee and then the neighborhood fee, and then you have your athletic club fee. And all of those payments are paid to the different sections, and the club at Prescott Lakes is a separate entity completely. They have a committee of governing board basically, but it doesn't talk to the HOA board of directors. It's completely separate, even though the CC&Rs state that you have to pay the initiation fee to the club in order to be an owner in Prescott Lakes.
Yeah.
So it's a one-way street.
You have to be a member of the club.
You have to be a member of the club, and it's a one-way street. Like the club doesn't talk to the association, but in order to live there, according to the CC&Rs, you have to pay you have to join the club, right? So, and then I found out that the master association, they have their fee. That's like the umbrella fee. And then your neighborhood fee is different. And that is assessed. It's an assessment. It's not a fee. It's an assessment to the neighborhood based on the unique qualities of the neighborhood within the master planned community. So, for instance, Astoria versus Creekside.
Yeah.
Those are two separate neighborhoods within Prescott Lakes. So, for instance, Creekside has a water feature. So the owners in Creekside are going to pay a different assessment, which is evaluated every 2 years than the people over in Astoria, because they have some separate they have different amenities.
Yeah, they have different features. There is no water feature in Astoria,
right,
for the homeowners in that neighborhood to maintain as a group.
That's right. So when you're looking at your HOA, you'll start to notice, oh my goodness, the irrigation. We pay for the irrigation. We pay for the lighting on the sign maintenance. If there's a water feature, making sure that the water is good water, that it's not, accumulating algae in the water feature.
Gotta keep the fountain clean.
Yeah. So there's there's different assessments, and that is actually evaluated every 2 years, and then they basically give you a payment based on what their projected costs are going to be to maintain your neighborhood within the association. So that's why they vary so much. So, you know, if you've got a townhome or a condo, your fees are going to significantly be different than somebody who doesn't require, outdoor landscaping or roof maintenance or exterior paint,
and then on the
updating or.
And on the positive side to that, if you're in a townhome and your HOA dues cover all of those things, it's one less thing for you to have to worry about.
That's right. Yeah, and I mean, some of them include trash. Some include water, some of them even include water. It just depends on where you are.
Painting of the home every couple of years.
Termite maintenance.
Yeah, we have one neighborhood off to the west side of town that they have a very specific color that all the homes have to be to help blend in with the natural surroundings. And they go through, I think it's every 5 years, and repaint all the houses. That's part of the dues. They put a new roof on every 15 years just to make sure that there's no issues. So again, that's for somebody who doesn't want to hassle with all of that, that's a positive. Yeah,
it is a positive. So, what's really important is that you understand what you're getting into.
Absolutely.
And that you can see what kind of reserves the HOA has. How are they good? Are they good at managing their money? How involved is the management, the management company that's, working for the association? What's their process and how they enforce their CC&Rs? How many people have been taken to court over these little weeds in their yard?
Yeah. The limit is 2 inches on the grass and you're at 2 1/4. That kind of stuff. And some, a lot of this stuff is done on what's called a complaint-based basis. So, a lot of management companies rely on the neighbors kind of ratting out neighbors in a way. So sometimes it could just be the crabby old guy on the corner. I read an instance where there was a community there was a guy with a notebook who would walk around the neighborhood every day, and he was taking notes, and he would send them into the HOA. And so it's kind of difficult to find out about that until you're actually living in a community, which is why it's important to ask the right questions. And I always recommend that you go to a house during different times of the day if you're planning on purchasing it, to make sure that it doesn't, something weird's not happening at 4 PM, than what you're expecting, because we went and looked at the house at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, well, and in certain communities, if there is a clubhouse with a pool, I would recommend you go to the clubhouse, find out what the hours are, because you're going to be paying for the utilities as a part of the community. You're going to be paying a part of the pool maintenance and keeping the lights on and, having all these amenities. What do they look like? Is it worth it? Is the money you're spending paying for, is there enough value there for you? And is the money being spent well? I mean, usually they're outsourcing to a management company, but you got to make sure that they're aligning themselves with the right one, and that it's a good fit. It's important. So I also think that asking the question of how many times has the homeowners been assessed, and what does that picture look like?
What are upcoming assessments? What are they looking at for the next session? To see are those rates going to increase in the very near future? Hi,
Absolutely.
Rachel.
Hi.
Thanks for watching. We love you too.
Yeah, Kellen, we talked about this when Daniel was on about insurance, but this is something you guys really need to make a note about and go find out. If you're living in an HOA, you need to make sure that you investigate this.
Yeah, it's important to know what their insurance situation looks like. And as a member of that association, you have the right to review that information. And I don't think a lot of people know that because, yeah, as we talked about with Daniel when he was on here, there was a community and they had a nice little park for their for the residents in their community. And several people had commented to the board that the swing set was in dire need of repair. And the association chose to do nothing about that. And then, unfortunately, one day, while a child was playing on that swing set, they were seriously injured to the point where they won't be able to live a normal life. They're going to require care for the rest of their lives. And so the parent of that child took the HOA to court because it was in the HOA. So who do you call? You know, who's liable for that? It's the HOA. But remember, it's a homeowners association. And when you own a home in the association, that's you. Just because it's being managed by a company, please remember that that's your community and you have a stake in it, whether you like it or not, unfortunately, because when that family rightfully won their lawsuit for tens of millions of dollars, the entire neighborhood got an assessment because they all basically had to split the cost over what the association's insurance would cover, because the settlement far exceeded the liability of the HOA in that situation. And so the rest got divvied up against everybody else. And if you had good enough insurance to cover it for yourself, then great. And if not,
that was a very expensive lesson to learn.
Yeah, it's a very expensive life lesson.
Yeah.
You know, so you want to investigate the viability of your association. Do they have good cash reserves? Do they have good insurance? All of those things are super important because you're taking over that liability. You know, you do get benefits when you're in an HOA, but benefits don't come without liability.
Absolutely.
It's just all there is to it.
Absolutely. And, you know, one of the other things that I think a lot of people have questions about is if it's a Firewise community. One thing that I learned just recently was the benefits of being in a Firewise community, because it can cover up to 90% of the cost to landscape to stay, you know, Firewise.
Create defensible space.
Yes. And so it's really great for people that purchase a lot in a community. If they decide to clear that lot to stay Firewise, they can get reimbursed for the cost that they incurred. So that's something you should investigate in a community when you're thinking about, you know, purchasing a lot. Also, you know, talking about Prescott Lakes and initiation fees.
We discovered an initiation fee hack.
Ooh, yes, I know. If you purchase a lot in Prescott Lakes, and let's say that lot's $125,000, you're going to be given the initiation fee will be based on the purchase of the lot at $125,000 versus if you purchase a home at $425,000 to $550,000, let's say, you know, you're going to be basically paying that initiation fee based on the actual sales price.
Yeah, because Prescott Lakes has as an initiation fee for any new resident, whether you're buying existing home or building a new home, of 1/2. It's currently 1/2 of 1% is the initiation fee.
Right. And
so when you're talking about the difference between $125,000 and $500,000, that fee is huge. The difference in that fee is massive.
Yeah. And I mean, you're still paying HOA dues on the lot and you're still paying some things. But if you look at it, if you're planning on building a house in the next year or so, they're not coming after you for an additional fee after you get your certificate of occupancy. So it's an interesting way that they assess those initiation fees. And so again, it's really important that you ask the right questions, or you get your realtor to ask the right questions and help you kind of navigate through these things so
That's
that
what we're
you
here for,
understand, and so that you understand what you're signing up for.
Yeah.
Do they have noise ordinance? Do they allow you to park in your driveway? These are important things. If you have lots of friends over all the time and you're parking cars then, or if you have roommates, or
do they allow street parking at all?
Right.
Some neighborhoods allow no street parking.
Right.
The townhouses in Quailwood, for example, you're not allowed to park on the street. You have to park in the driveway or in a designated parking area, which is, depending on where you are, a quarter mile away. So if you have a lot of guests over, that's something important for you to understand, because if you have a lot of guests over all the time, maybe that's not the community for you. If you don't want them, unless you have a little golf cart and you shuttle your guests back and forth to their car.
Yeah, which, that's not ideal
No.
long term.
That's not a
Not
good
ideal.
long-term solution.
Yeah. So,
Poor life choice.
oh boy, yeah. So I think that overall HOAs are a good thing. Just because there are CC&Rs doesn't mean that there's an HOA in place. Just because there's not an HOA doesn't mean there aren't CC&Rs and deed restrictions. So just know that there can be one without the other. And
Yes.
so it's important to see, okay, even though there's not an active HOA, I still can't build a manufactured house in a site-built area. I can't.
And those areas around town are getting fewer and further between, as time goes on. Last I heard, inside of Prescott city limits, they're not offering any new permits for manufactured homes. They are still making available replacement permits. So if you have an existing manufactured home and you want to replace it, then you still can do that, but no new manufactured homes within Prescott city limits. And then in most neighborhoods in Prescott Valley, and even in a lot of neighborhoods now in Chino Valley, they're excluding manufactured homes.
So
times are changing.
Oh, I know. And, one other thing I was going to say is, sometimes you see people in an HOA and they stop paying their dues. And, you always wonder about what's going to happen if they continue just to stop paying. And
Fun fact, they take your house.
they put a lien on your house.
Yeah, they can foreclose on you.
And they charge you all of the legal fees. In order for them to do that to you, you get to pay that too.
Yeah.
So just don't buy in an area if you're not comfortable with the payment.
Yeah.
Don't do it, because you're
It's
not going to win
literally part of your
that
house
fight. Yeah, no, it's the odds are stacked against you in that situation. So, you need to factor that into your payment. You need to think about what that really means, because if you have a payment of $1,400 a month for your mortgage and you have a $200 a month HOA fee, you have to take that into account. So always make sure that you evaluate that after looking at the CC&Rs and the HOA fees. So.
Well, and not only that too, I think a good rule of thumb is when you're looking at homes, look around. And if your vision for where you want to live is kind of different from what you're seeing, if it's a home in an HOA, probably we need to look in a different neighborhood. Because there are instances where, the HOA clearly said, if you would like to have flags on your home, we're fine with that. However, this is how you have to do it. There's a guy who paid over $180,000 in fines and legal fees to fight an HOA because he wanted to put a proper flagpole in his front yard. A little bit of deductive reasoning can go a long way. If you don't see any flagpoles in the neighborhood, it's not because there's a bunch of unpatriotic jerks in the neighborhood. Probably the HOA has a rule against such large structures.
Yeah.
Little things like that can save you a lot of time and headache. And, if you live in an HOA that you just really hate, and you want to fight them, it's hard to win.
Well, and also don't assume that because you see something like an RV on the side of a house, that automatically means that RVs are allowed.
Mm-hmm.
It may be that this person again is basically just waiting for somebody to complain and nobody has.
Yeah.
And you need to really make sure that even if you do see, like for instance, in Pinion Oaks, you can have an RV in Pinion Oaks. But let's say that the CC&R stated you could not have an RV, but everybody just started doing it. And everyone was on this honor code that you won't tell if I won't tell.
Snitches get stitches.
Right. So, if that's the case and you don't see an amendment to the CC&Rs that allow that, you really do need to consider that. Do you want to play that game?
Do you want to take that risk?
Do you want to take that risk? Because everybody could be told with notices if an HOA is enacted that we're going with the old CC&R because
no RVs allowed on the property.
Because the amendment wasn't done properly. You just never know. So you have to kind of evaluate that risk, and you have to know what you're buying. You have to truly understand the ins and outs of your CC&Rs and make sure that your realtor provides those to you within your inspection period. So, okay.
And I think one of the things that I learned in researching this topic was it's cheaper to sell your house and move to a different neighborhood if you're really that against your HOA. Because it's just not a fight that most people can win. And unless you've got a ton of cash stacked up ready to go to war in a courtroom, let us help you find a house in a better neighborhood for you. I think would be the rule that I would go with, because it's going to cost you. I was reading stories of people paying hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and then still having liens on their home because of arguments with the HOAs.
Just for the principle of the matter.
Yeah, because they wanted to be stubborn. You're like, no, I'm not doing that. Yeah. All right, well, it costs you a lot of money.
Yeah, crazy.
So, yeah, don't waste your life energy on that kind of stuff, man. It's not a good way to go.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to be back.
It is good to be back.
Getting back into the swing of everything. So it's been
been
nice to take a break, but I'm happy to be back into our busy schedule. So
yeah, me too. It's going to be a good year.
Cool. Well, thank you guys all for watching. We appreciate you. We really, really do. And we're looking forward to seeing you guys a lot more throughout the year. Until next time, she's Carissa Maxwell. I'm Kellen Hoskins, and we'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.